so dark.
No, really? Yes, I'm not interested in that. But can you tell me what the hell's wrong with me? I've never seen a doctor the whole, never heard a word, never drunk anything, tasted anything, smelled anything, anything at all. It's like being dead.
I know.
I've been blind the whole bloody time and I'm deaf.
I know. Well, what do you want to know
What's
about
wrong?
it?
Exactly. Which part of the brain and how did it, what did it happen?
It's
Who
called
put it there?
herpetic encephalitis. It was a virus which nobody put there. It just got there
How?
and went to
Where
the
did it come
brain.
from?
We don't know where it came from.
How long has it been there?
It's been there about a year. You didn't know your name. You didn't know your name. You didn't know your address. You didn't know who you were, where you were, anything. They traced you by your Barclay card and they rang me up. And I came and collected you. I was beside myself by that time, having litters of kittens, not knowing where you were. I was very worried about you, darling.
It's not much fun on you, is it, what's happened? It's not much fun for you, what's happened.
They took me into the corridor and we stood next to some fire extinguishers and lots of people rushing past us. And they said they were very sorry, but they thought there was a very high risk of your dying.
You see?
It's a nice place to tell somebody something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, without any information about what it is either, not the sort of thing that you ought to know immediately.
No.
What? Gosh, it's very soggy, it's very wet,
soggy,
isn't it?
What a view.
How long's it been?
Hazy,
How long's it been? Just don't worry about views from there. Just how long was that?
How long what?
How long did they take to sort of get through to that point?
You'd been ill for 12 days before you went into hospital.
Really? And then they got into the hospital. Could they analyse what it was?
It took 11 hours once you got into hospital to work out what it was.
Oh, God, that's rather exceptional, isn't it?
Yes.
How many cases did they have of this a year?
Hardly any.
Where did I get it from?
I don't know.
How many cases a year?
About 50.
1 per million.
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it? People die of it.
I want to ask you, I think, what might seem an awkward question, and if it seems impudent or painful, you must tell me at once. So much of our personal identity is related to what we can remember, and who we are is, in some sense, is the sum of what we think we are and what we've been. How hard is it to have a relationship with someone and retain a sense that it is him when he himself has got such an inadequate sense of his own extension backwards in time?
It sounds ludicrous to say so, but as a person, soul, whatever you want to call it, his soul is unchanged. His person is unchanged. He's the same man. He's still my husband.
Yes, indeed. At the time when these pictures were taken, Clive was in full possession of all his faculties. In fact, he had a good memory and exceptional skills in music. A brain scan would have shown no abnormalities whatsoever. In March 1985, the previously inactive virus of herpes simplex suddenly began to multiply inside his nervous system. It attacked and irreversibly damaged certain parts of his brain. The right temporal lobe, the frontal lobe, and in particular the left temporal lobe. All these areas became scarred and the holes filled up with fluid. After this almost fatal illness, physical health returned to normal, except for occasional seizures which take the form of belching. But Clive is left with a dense and almost impenetrable amnesia. When did you actually start this diary procedure? Was it his idea or was it yours?
Well, I had noticed he started writing on bits of paper by the bed, and it wasn't until about October last year that he began to use the diary and note down the time of day all the time. It's a chronology of the day, simply. Because he's in a constant state of thinking he's just woken up and won't acknowledge that he's been awake before, even if he sees it in his own handwriting.
But otherwise, the diary itself has no content at all. You see, here we have Tuesday, May the 13th, which was the day that we started filming with him. And he says, 9:23, awake first time, builder's noise is be awful. And that was in fact when he was distressed when we first came, because he'd been upset by the noise. Now the interesting thing is there's an entry for 10:23, awake, playing cards elsewhere. The next entry is 12:55, and there's actually no record of what happened in that previous 2 hours. Now if you remember, between 10:23 and 12:55 we were doing that filming in the hospital chapel with the choir. Although Clive had seen his wife earlier that morning, he greeted her as if it was the first time in years.
Come and sit down.
It was like dying and being dead.
I'm not dead.
It feels like it. You've never seen it, never touched anything. What's it like? What's it like when you're dead, you know?
I haven't tried it, sweetie.
Neither have I. I don't know whether any consciousness actually transferred to it, but if you never see it, you never see anything, I've touched it, not the sense of being in connection with anything at all. You're exactly like being dead.
I know. Give us a kiss. It's lovely to see you.
It's wonderful to see you. You've no idea how much better it is to see you.
Look, I've got an organ.
I used to play it.
Did you?
Yes, when I was a student.
Do you want to open it? I'll switch it on.
Have I been playing at all?
Yes.
Am I?
Yes. You played quite a lot.
Really?
We've got some friends here, actually, who could sing something with you.
Well, that's too much.
I'll get you some keyboard music, but you
Just do the keyboard music.
twiddle around a
Yes, I
bit.
can do that.
Okay. Sweet pie. Look who's here.
It's hard to say whether the broad smile with which he greets a member of his old choir really means that he recognizes her.
You look still are you then? You look wonderful.
That's awfully well is what I mean.
Linda would sing something with you, because you know how my voice is.
Do you know? How about that one?
Yeah, that's fine,
Okay.
If my complaints could passions move, or make love see wherein I suffer wrong, my heart for thy unkindness breaks. All love I live and die in thee. Yet for redress thou lay'st me still complain.
I like the keyboard down.
It's fascinating, yeah.
soon as the music started, Clive's professional personality was unaccountably restored, and a casual observer would hardly suspect that large parts of his memory are virtually non-existent. And yet when the music stops, he is left high and dry, and he often improvises or confabulates an imaginary past, as if to make up for the one he has forgotten.
Thank you all very much. It's lovely. I waved, you sang.
You've been very well trained.
Well, you had exactly the right thing. It's an extraordinary experience to be blind and deaf and dumb for so long. Suddenly this morning I have no idea how I got here. I've no memory of it at all. I don't even know how I walked in through that door.
Really?
And the consciousness has actually come to light since I've been standing in there. Yes. Have I been conducting before?
Oh, yes.
Have I really? I didn't know that. But this today is the first time I've actually been conscious of doing anything at all. How extraordinary.
Do you remember who we are now? Do you recognise?
I can't remember what his name is.
No. But do you remember our faces?
The face is very familiar.
Oh, good.
That's not the problem at all. But I can't remember any names at all of anybody. I can remember my own. That's about the only one.
Yeah.
I just did it if I was woken up for the first time. And I've been, in fact, asleep, as it were, the whole time that I've been ill. And then suddenly today, during the course of the performance of those pieces, everything has switched from being blind and deaf into sight and sound. Everything's suddenly come back again. I can also feel things with my fingers.
Do you remember playing the organ a little while ago? Yeah.
No, that's a mystery to me. Did I play it very badly? That's
No,
right.
you played beautifully. Did I play it right?
You accompanied Linda in a song.
Did I really?
She sang a Darling Blue song when you played. It was very, very nice.
No, I've been blind and deaf the whole time, until today. It's the first time I've had any sight and any sound at all. And suddenly I can see in colour. That's the other exciting thing. The odd bits of sight that I had before had been black and white all the time. But they're completely unmemorable. I can't remember much about them at all. But it's an extraordinary thing. I can hear things now. I can hear traffic noise outside.
Yes.
I never heard any noise at all. So your music's brought it back. It's wonderful the way you did it. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, thank you. We've enjoyed it. Great pleasure. Brings back old times.
Take the clock back a bit.
Yes.
And what was the first thing you saw this morning when you came?
I don't know. I don't know. There's no connection with it at all. I've got it now in colour for the first time. And that's happened within the last 2 minutes.
And where are we now?
This is a chapel I know very well. I used to work in. I can't remember its name. It's very familiar. But I was ill here for a very long time.
Here?
Yes. Connected with it in some way. No, wait a minute. I personally wasn't ill. No, that's right. I used to come here in the summer. That's right. And help to run the places while the staff were on their holiday. So you imagine what it's like, the problem for staff who run a hospital, sort of set up, and they want to have a summer holiday. So I started when I was at Cambridge, and I used to come into hospitals, and I began to set that up myself, to be in charge of it, in fact, the whole country. Because luckily places like Cambridge and Oxford draw their students from all over the country. So physically you've got them scattered all over. And you can put teams together to carry out hospital jobs during the summer holidays while the major staff are having their break. And I was in charge of that for some years.
And this was one of the places where you worked?
Yes, indeed it was. Yes. It's very familiar. It's a long time since I've seen it. I think my eyes are open today for the first time. I've been blind and deaf the whole time I've been ill. And I have no sense of taste. None of the senses have been working at all. In fact, I can't remember now what was going on this morning or why I was here, because that has no memory for me at all. I don't know whether people sang or what happened. I have no clue. As far as I'm concerned, the first thing that happened is that my eyes have opened. And this is the first morning that I've had any conscious memory at all of anything at all, since I've been ill. I've never seen a thing, talked to anything about anybody, about the problems to anybody at all. It's the first time I had a conversation with him. So what's been happening, I haven't any idea at all. But to be blind and deaf is very, very odd. Very few human beings, I suspect, who have it.
Darling!
In fact, he doesn't remember a single event that has ever happened to him. He knows about things. His semantic memory is relatively unimpaired, and he'll know where he went to school and so forth, but he cannot remember a single thing that's ever happened to him. He's absolutely no episodic memory at all.
So we have to distinguish then between episodic and semantic.
Yes.
I mean, he knows things about the world, but cannot remember events.
He knows I'm his wife, but he can't remember getting married to me.
Yes.
He knows he's got children, but he can't remember having them.
Now, Clive's responses to your reappearances, how long does the gap have to be for him to be surprised by your return?
Between 10 and 15 minutes now.
It's bloody awful. It feels like that. I've not seen a damn thing I heard anything or touched anything or felt anything or smelled anything at all. Not by a sense of word at all. It's incredible. And I've not seen you at all until now. I've never seen anyone at all until now. But I tell you, I'm used to it. It's like being dead. How long lived bastard? I've never seen a thing for a year. Never smelled anything, tasted anything, touched anything. Not my sense of being in contact with anything. It feels like being dead.
I know.
Could be. Never no way of thinking, there's no way to thought at all.
Because dead is blankness,
Yes, if it was anything, could be. For all I know. Nobody else has been dead, have they?
No, but if you thought you were dead, then you couldn't have been dead because you thought.
Well, I know, that thought occurred to me as well. But one doesn't know. No one's been dead to tell me. Incredible situation. Why on earth couldn't something be done for me to make me conscious until now?
You've been conscious, but the brain hasn't been able to
Not as far as I'm concerned. I mean, conscious actually means the person involved is actually connected with it,
Yes.
doesn't it? That hasn't happened.
Well, you've been connected with the
consciousness.
present tense, moment to moment.
Maybe, but not in any way
But
connected with me
you've not
consciously.
been able to store.
Not only is a question of
your
story, it's
experience.
actually visiting anything. I haven't seen the whole of that game.
But it's not your eyes that are faulty.
No, it is, it's the brain. But at the same time, it means effectively that I'm deaf and blind.
What is going wrong is that everything that you experience is being lost. It's fading away.
It's not registering the
It's
brain.
not registering,
Not
that's
at all.
right. It's not making any impact. It's not leaving a trace or an imprint on the brain. So it happens and then it fades.
I've never seen a doctor, I've never talked to anyone about the case, so I have nothing. What is staggering is the ignorance that this generates in human life. How many cases do they get this sort of thing?
Very few. They get about 1 per million per year in Britain. So the fact that you had it is extraordinary. I mean, it's a very rare phenomenon. Do you remember when we went to Venice? There's a lovely picture of Venice. Do you recognise that bit of it?
This looks very familiar, but I can't remember what it is.
Do you know what that is?
No, I can't remember any details about it at all. It just looks familiar. That's all.
We went in there, I think,
Yes,
in 1984.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah. Is that a cathedral or a palace?
I don't know what it is. I forgot.
It's a funny tiger, which I think is peculiar to Venice. And he had a palace which is next to the main square.
No, it's very familiar, but I can't
by the
details.
water.
All those details have gone. Can you tell me what's wrong with me? I've never talked to anybody about this case. I
I know what the hell's going on.
What's wrong with you is the fact that you can't recognise that picture is an illustration of what's wrong with you. Because you can't remember. You've lost a lot of your memory.
There's no connection at all with any sight. I've not seen anything to it today. It's the first time. I've not heard anything, not seen anything, not touched anything, not the sense of being in contact with it at all. The whole thing has been completely shattered.
I know.
It's like being bloody or dead.
I noticed.
Why the hell the doctors can't do any better than this, I don't know. It's like being dead all the bloody time. How long has it been?
Sit down.
Well, why have they been unable to do anything? It's like being madmen.
I know.
They can't do anything better than this.
But they do.
It's like being dead.
Exactly like being dead. It's like that because you've got so blank all the time.
Seen nothing,
no
heard
knowledge
nothing,
of what's been happening to you since you were
at all,
ill, have
no?
you?
Nothing at all?
No.
Not seen anything, not heard anything, not even seen this game.
I think you'll find that one of the most difficult things is remembering people, remembering things, remembering sights. I mean, do those people look familiar to you?
Yes.
Who are they?
I can't remember names. I can't remember names, it's just faces I remember.
Yeah, but what area do you think you might have seen
London.
those people in
London.
before? In London? In what sort of context?
Catholic Church. Somewhere, one of the choirs or something.
One of the choirs?
Something like that. I can't.
So what do you think they could be?
Names. I can't remember them.
What, singers?
Might be singers. Yeah.
Clergy?
More likely to be singers, but I don't know.
Singers?
I don't know who they are at all.
So you see, that's an interesting thing. My pin-up.
That's bloody awful me. What's been wrong? Can you just tell me what the illness has been? I mean, I really can't get to this sort of stuff. I'm actually conscious now for the first time. I just want to find out what the bloody hell they've been doing, what's been wrong with me. Who hasn't a fucking clue.
Well,
I've never seen anyone at all.
This is one of the things that's wrong with you. The fact that you find it difficult to recognise.
It's a question of not seeing anything at all. That's the point. I've been blind the whole time. I've been deaf the whole time. No sense of touch. Nothing at all. No smell. Nothing. I've basically not seen anything at all. And not
when he continually asks questions about things which he has learnt, for example, how long have I been ill? And when you press him, he does reply correctly that it's about a year. Do you think he is experiencing a difficulty in retrieval? Or is it that the memory trace is so shallow that it seems to him too remote to trust?
Well, I'm not certain that he knows that it is a year. I think that what he knows is that he's heard you say that he has been ill for a year. And what you get now is a stereotyped response to that question.
And the question itself triggers the response.
That's right.
As if he's hearing an echo. He hears the question and that reminds him of the consecutive response.
I mean, since there is so little retained of the past, the notion of something being a year ago, in a sense, is meaningless within the context of his retrospective experience, because he has none.
Yes.
Which is presumably one of the reasons why he obsessionally keeps that diary, in an attempt to give some sort of continuity to something which, left to itself, would be erasing itself as it went along.
Yes, what he can't record mentally, he feels a compulsion to record on paper.
She does care about it, Deborah. She's lovely. I used to do my job the best I could, Lord. I didn't try to do it perfectly, but I knew it was never going to be perfect on her. Try to be perfect as well.
You say that he would phone you frequently and use the answering service. So he remembered his telephone number.
He does remember his telephone number, which he's had for about 16 years.
And he also remembers how to use a telephone.
And he remembers how to reverse the charges.
No, darling, look, it's Clive here. It's 10 to 7. I haven't spoken to anybody in this place. I know nothing about this case at all. I just want to speak to you, please. Can you come and see me, please, as soon as you possibly can? I don't care about anybody else in the world, just you, please. Please come. Love you. Bye-bye, darling. Well, as a matter of fact, it's 4 minutes past 7. This is Clive here. I don't want to speak to anyone else. I only want to speak to you, darling. Can you come and see me, please? I have the clue what's happened. I just want to talk to you. No one else in the world matters. You're the only person I love. Please come soon. I don't care how late it is. Come to me at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't mind. I just love you, and I want you to come as soon as you can, please, darling. Take care. I love you. I haven't seen you yet, and I want to. Please come, darling. Bye-bye. Oh, it's 7:15, darling. This is Clive here, in case you don't recognize my voice. I have no idea what's been going on. I haven't actually had any possible inquiries at all here. I'd much rather talk to you. If there's any way you can get to me tonight, please do come. I just want to see you, please. Please come, darling. Please come. Please come. Bye-bye.
The musical memory, I feel there is a much, I don't just feel, I see there is much greater attention. And when, for example, he's playing a piece which has repeat marks, when he was particularly ill, he would just keep playing the piece over and over again, not knowing that he'd already played it once. But fairly early on, and before I noticed marked improvement verbally or visually, he was able to play, for example, a piece of polyphony, follow on with a section of soli, go back to repetitio, get to the fine, and end. Why? Why do you think the musical memory is...
There is something different about music. It's very hard to say what it is. People often refer to music as if it was a language. Well, it's a communication, for sure. It's something that one person does for another, and it brings about an effect. But it's not like a language in certain very important ways. For example, when you speak of language, it's possible to paraphrase it. It's very hard to imagine what a paraphrase in a piece of music would be like.
Yes.
What would a paraphrase of the first 10 bars of the Diabelli variations be like? You know, say it again, say the same thing in a different way in music. It's inconceivable.
Yes.
So it's quite clear there's something different about the communication of music to the communication of language. It's organized in a different way. And I suppose that if that is the case, that it must be computed in a different way, and therefore stored and then retrieved in a different way. So that although an injury of the sort that Clive has sustained has had a global effect on almost every aspect of his capacity to retain and then retrieve information, for some reason this musical capacity has been least injured of all.
Is it because it uses another part of the brain, the right hemisphere?
We do know in Clive's case that the left side is much more seriously damaged than the right, and there is evidence to show that the right seems to be more concerned with that type of musical discrimination than the left is. The left is much more concerned with logical connections and the sort of connections which make it possible to speak and organize language. But there's evidence to show that there are many aspects of visual processing which also seem to be done best on the right side of the brain. The capacity to see whole shapes and to recognize faces, for example, is much more highly developed on the right than on the left.
Where are you there? Dressed in a white coat?
Yes, it's just after a concert or rehearsal for it.
Why are people carrying trays and bottles of wine?
They're just going to try and get themselves worked up ready for the concert.
You look as if you're in some kind of uniform.
Yes, I am. The others aren't.
You look like a waiter. You think you'd
I've just
like a
been
waiter?
conducting by the look of that, yeah. I've been conducting a concert, and these were the people after.
Or an ice cream man or something? I've never seen you conduct dressed like that. Hmm?
Yes, we used to use that system.
You do look to me like a waiter, darling. Oh, look. Oh, very distinguished.
No, that one, yeah. That was because I was a student at Cambridge at the time.
Or just finished being?
Yes, I just got my degree, I think.
What was your degree?
Oh, I mean.
Do you know where we are?
Yeah. Looks like a place I used to work in.
Do you know where, more to the point, do you know where we're going?
Yes, Cambridge.
Yes!
Because I thought immediately this was a place I used to go to when I was a student at Cambridge. And I used to work in these places, actually organising in the summer with staff from the university students for something like 15 years. And I used to bring students from Cambridge to work in these places all over the country. Because Cambridge students, luckily, were drawn from all over the world. So you'd have places like Leeds or Birmingham, Isaac Clare, and which is very close to King's. It's almost next door. I sang in the chapel choir at Clare personally, but I set up all sorts of things for the university as a whole. In fact, the University Musical Club, on which I organised. I can't remember its name now. It's terrible. I used to know all sorts of things.
What about the building of the chapel?
I have to think very hard. It's years since I've seen
What
it.
about
Yes,
this
it is this one.
Is that one?
And that might be from the outside. No, it's not. No.
What's that?
I can't
Do you
remember.
think it's in Cambridge?
Yes, it is. I recognise that. I used to know that one very well.
But you think this is Clare? Which
That's
bit
right.
of the building is it?
It's the chapel.
The chapel. Do you remember this college at all?
Very familiar, yes.
Which
I used to
one is
rehearse it here. It looks like King's.
Yeah, it is King's.
Yeah.
This is obviously Tudor, isn't it?
Well, it's 19th century
Roses.
stuff.
It's what century?
19th century. All
19th century?
Yeah, all of it.
But this is bizarre.
Always put up then.
Terribly old to me.
Yes, well, it was all put up then. Good heavens. Well, I'm very pleased to see you. It's extraordinary to see someone.
I'm fine. How are you?
Fine, thank you very much.
You look terribly surprised to
Well, you're the
see
first person, apart from my dear wife, you're the first person I've recognised at all the whole time I've been here.
It's lovely to see you.
Yeah,
Are you going to come and have a look in the chapel?
No idea, I
Yes,
suppose so.
please. I've just been saying it's quite a long time since he was here.
I suppose it must be. Well,
Yes.
the last time you were here was when you came to do those programmes about gibbons.
I did some recordings here, that's right, yes, I remember. Yeah.
For the BBC.
Yeah, yeah.
On the coach, on the way up, you were telling me that if you were conducting in King's, you'd be looking for a hard-edged sound, and you'd be looking for very, very clear articulation. That's what you said.
Well,
So
that's, well, for King's, yes, that's
that must be
necessary,
because you remembered the
In a building
acoustic
like
here.
this, of course, you have a slightly different situation.
Well, this is King's.
Yes, but it's not quite the same level.
What is the acoustic like at King's Chapel?
It's much more, isn't it, than this?
This is King's Chapel.
I'm forgetting everything. My memory is completely destroyed.
You have a look. You have a look.
I see why I'm getting confused. I'm not seeing this from the West End, am I? Yes, I haven't actually come up here very often, that's why. And it's that view from down there looking this way. That's what I'm...
Did you ever play the organ? You want to have a go?
It sounds very familiar. I think I have
play?
done. God knows what I can play anymore.
Have a go.
What you could do.
You know, play a few chords.
Which
That's about it. No chord, no pedal. Because I doubt
pedals.
Which did you say were the oldest pipings?
Well, the oldest pipes would be these sounds here if you play on the bottom end.
Bored with the whole bloody way it's been treated. It's like being dead.
I know.
You never have any food, never have any drink, never have any taste, never have any food, never connection with anything with being at all, never talk, anything at all. It's bloody terrible.
I know, darling, but I can't
Suddenly I'm consciously awake for the first bloody time. I think it's like to be madmen.
You're not, though.
They are. They're behaving very stupidly. The people who've been treating me. I haven't seen a damn thing the whole bloody time.
I know. Keep calm, darling.
Like mad.
Keep calm.
What? How can they do anything? You made me
Won't
conscious.
make you feel any better.
That's bloody stupidity. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
I know.
Like being dead.
I know.
stupidity of people that handle cameras in the same bloody way at the same time. The stupid, ridiculous bloody nonsense. The first time I've seen anything. I'm making a bloody camera film.
They can't go through here.
What are they doing this for? Stupid people.
Looks as if it's a founder's window, though, doesn't it?
It's the majority of somebody.
What's it say?
In maiorem something Dei gloria, in the greatest glory to Christ, Elizabeth, Lord of Clare.
Elizabeth, Lord of Clare?
Yes, Lordess.
Lordess. Domine declare huius collegi. And what's it say?
Can't read the next word, can you?
No, and then it says...
Beneficiorum memor.
So it's in memory of the benefactor, isn't it, of Clare?
Oh, God, I'm so rusty. So I'm now seeing for the first time. I mean, what on earth am I supposed to be doing? I can hardly see a thing until now. It's the first time I've seen it.
This is a very English one, Edward C. Van.
This is the record of John, when the Jews set priests and the Levites from Jerusalem to him. Who art thou? And he confessed and denied not, and said plainly, I am not the Christ. And he confessed and denied not, and said plainly, I am not the Christ, I am not the Christ. And they asked him, what art thou then? Art thou Elias? Art thou Elias? And he said, I am not.
I can't sing these things without knowing anything about them.
How do you think?
I don't know. It's madness. It's a madhouse.
Who's the music by, do you know?
It's very familiar. I can't remember now.
What's it?
That's it.
I have no knowledge of doing that at all. It's entirely new to me. I have no knowledge of doing that whatsoever. This is the first time I've seen anything the whole time I've been ill. Since I come sitting in this room, I actually hear things for the first time. I can see things for the first time.
And that was you singing
I have no knowledge of it
on
at all.
Friday.
I have no knowledge of that at all.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Presumably the brain is not working properly. No one puts anything right. But now, consciously, for the first time, I actually see things for the first bloody time since I've been ill.
Yes.
I have not seen anything, not heard anything, not tasted anything, not smelt anything. In no sense have I been conscious. I thought I was dead.
But there you were conscious.
Yes, I know. Not conscious to me. Not conscious to me.
Well, you were conscious.
I know nothing about it at all. It's just the first time I've seen it. I had nothing to do with that noise. Nothing connected with me in any way.
Well, what would you offer as an explanation for that?
Some stupid thing that the illness has attacked the brain. It's completely disconnected. Any connection with me. Anything that's been done has nothing to do with me personally.
But who was singing there?
Presumably me, but I know nothing about it.
Well, that is what happens, you see, in this illness, is that it separates your present from your past because of this.
Well, I've now got my presence back again for the first time. I've not consciously seen a damn thing the whole time I've been ill. Neither I tasted anything, heard anything, smelt anything, or had any words with anybody.
You had your presence there in Cambridge.
I have no knowledge of it. I have no knowledge of it.
What you haven't.
No, I have no knowledge of it whatever.
To retain it.
It's in no way connected with me.
Because you can't remember it.
No, what I do is not connected with me in any way. So what's been happening, I have the faintest idea. Why the doctors can't make me conscious, I don't know. Because I've been unconscious the whole time that was done. I know nothing about it at all.
You can't sing when you're unconscious.
I have done so.
What happens is this, Clive, you were conscious at the time.
And not conscious to me. No, not to me. Not to me. The consciousness involves me.
It does. You're quite right.
I know nothing about that at all. Never seen it before. Never heard it. I know nothing of what's been done. I have no memory of any music whatever the whole time I've been ill. I've been trying to find out why not.
Well, if the brain isn't in a state in which it can receive the information and retain it,
The brain has not received any kind of information of any kind. No sight, I've seen nothing. I've seen nothing, not heard anything, tasted anything, smelt anything, felt anything. I haven't been in contact with human beings consciously at all.
Do you know where you were when you were singing?
No, haven't a clue. Never seen that before. That's news to me.
How would you like some coffee now?
I'd like something to make me conscious again. I've been unconscious the whole bloody time. It's like being dead.
Well, do you think it would be nice to have some coffee? It might help, don't you know?
What would you say if I told you you conducted the Lassos Ensemble last week?
That's hilarious.
I thought you'd say that.
That's absolutely hysterical. I know not at all.
Do you want me to prove it to you?
Good heavens. This is the strangest thing I've ever seen.
You know the words?
Yeah. That's from a long time ago. I don't know. No, I can't do that. I remember that now.
How would you conduct it?
Oh, I did. No, I did. I can't remember. I haven't seen myself conduct before. Do I do that subconsciously? I'm completely unconscious about it. How astonishing. I don't remember doing that at all. No knowledge of it at all. I'm chuffing. This morning I have no idea how I got it.
It seems quite clear that memory is a much more complicated serial process in which experiences are very elaborately transformed in the process of being perceived, let alone remembered. And then it has to go through very, very complicated redistribution into various addresses, to use computer terminology, and is assigned to various types of systems, various classifications. And it may well be that under certain circumstances it can be retrieved under one description,
yes,
when it's completely inaccessible under another.
But are memories contained in the neurons, do you think? I mean, where are the memories? Where are they in? Are they in the chemicals? Are they in the electric impulses between the synapses? Are they in the neurons?
I think there's no answer to that question, even put in that form, because we don't quite know what type of system we are. At the moment, the prevailing model is the computational one, and therefore we use words like addresses in order to describe where things are.
But look at Clive's brain. If you look at the CAT scans and you see the vast areas which have been destroyed, and where the neurons just don't exist anymore, one would have thought that quite a lot of knowledge has gone. And yet, although if you ask him, he'll say he hasn't got the knowledge, very often with the right clues and prompts and cues and the right mood, state of mind and so forth, you can get a flash of knowledge which you'd assumed wasn't there anymore.
But it's clear from using the computer model that it's not quite like a container in the purely mechanical, voluminous sense.
Yes.
It's not like a box into which you can put so much and the rest of it overflows, and that if you lose boxes, you lose memories.
Yes.
It's obviously organized in a very different way to that. Now, the present way of looking at it incorporates some sort of flow chart in which we see things being, first of all, assigned to a primary level, which is often called iconic or echoic, as if it was simply a picture or a tape recording of the sound in the forefront of the mind, whatever the forefront is.
Yes.
And then it goes to some short-term store, and then after some sort of elaborate transformation is then allocated to something more long-term, which is not in the immediate working memory but can nevertheless be retrieved.
Yes.
Now, although these sorts of patterns and charts and diagrams are used to describe what goes on, we have no real idea about what sort of material representation corresponds to these flowcharts, or whether the flowcharts are anything more than a sort of vaguely explanatory device.
One reads so often, memory is fundamental to human beings. Memory is what marks humans out from animals. And Clive himself has often remarked quite spontaneously, and I have never suggested the thought to him, when we're discussing that he hasn't, his memory isn't functioning properly, he often volunteers, that makes me like animals then, doesn't it? And yet, despite all the many times that this has been said, I've never lost sight of the Cliveness of Clive. And he has always, throughout the illness, been exactly the same person. There's a little passage in Proust, La Recherche du Temps Perdu, and I wonder if I might just read it to you, because I think he expresses this conception rather well. When I woke at midnight, not knowing where I was, I could not be sure at first who I was. I had only the most rudimentary sense of existence, such as may lurk and flicker in the depths of an animal's consciousness. I was more destitute of human qualities than the cave dweller. But then, the memory, not yet of the place in which I was, but of various other places where I'd lived and might now very possibly be, would come like a rope let down from heaven to draw me up out of the abyss of not being, from which I could never have escaped by myself. In a flash I would traverse and surmount centuries of civilization, and out of a half-visualized succession of oil lamps followed by shirts with turned-down collars, would put together, by degrees, the component parts of my ego.
The very first thing when you wake up is that you still don't know where you are. You are still mentally, in your imagination, somewhere else maybe. You don't know for certain. So what you do is gradually open your eyes, and they focus on the things around them, and they remind you and tell you, and it all settles down. And I've been in that sort of vague before settling down for the whole time. I've not seen this room till now, in fact.
I think there's no sense in which one could think of someone, whether it be Clive, who's lost his memory, or Proust, who was gradually regaining his as he awoke. There's no sense in which either of these people are reduced to the state of animals, because there's no way in which human beings ever can be reduced to the state of animals. A human being, no matter how reduced he or she might be, by losing faculties, by losing parts, by losing abilities and experiences and senses, is always a human being, reduced by that amount.
But from Clive's point of view, he often feels that he's been reduced to no life at all, and he often attributes his blankness, his lack of memory of anything that's preceded that moment, as to death. He often says, I think I must have been dead, and he thinks his condition is like death. And he very often expresses the wish that he'd been allowed to die, because although we have moments when he is happy and we have a lovely walk together in the sunshine, he enjoys playing the piano, and I haven't lost sight of the Cliveness of Clive, nevertheless he spends a very great deal of his time in a never-ending agony, trapped, as I said, in the present tense, moment to moment. What of Clive's future? We know that his capacity to improve is slight. I don't know at this stage how to see the next 30 years stretching ahead of us. What will it be? 24 hours after 24 hours of perseverating and agony for him. And how do you see his future? Given that he still has the capacity to be a huge human being through his music and through loving me. But he can't do that all the time, and there's quite a lot of time when he's alone and he's trapped in what he calls his hell on earth. I mean, I don't know how to plan his future, how to help him to make his life worth living.